So let's first try to go to Google and search what are strings. So I'm just gonna type strings. Strings is a pop band in JavaScript. There we go. A string is a data type used in programming such as integer and floating point unit, but is used in representing text rather than numbers. Strings are sequences of characters that are treated as a single unit. They are like chain of symbols that are represented. So strings basically means when a textual data is stored in a variable. So that is why in this video we're going to first discuss all of the basics of strings, including how to declare, initialize and manipulate strings in JavaScript. And then we'll discuss different string methods used for looping, converting, searching, splitting, etc. We will also solve some of the most commonly asked data structure questions on strings in our DSA interviews. So first of all, we're going to see how we can go on and create strings in JavaScript. So we can write something like const string equals new string, and then we can write anything inside of it. Let's say subscribe to roadside coder, which you should. So this is how you declare a string, but this is not the very popular way of declaring a string. So rather than this, I'm gonna write const string 2 equals just like that, and I'm gonna write it inside of over. So we can use double quotes to declare a string. Now apart from double quotes, we can also use single quotes, or we can use backticks. Now what are backticks? Backticks are these tilted inverted commas. But what's so special about this backticks? Is there something different about it? So what we can do with this is we can span this backtick in multiple lines. So let me show you. So for example, we've written this and it's perfectly fine, right? We can span this in different lines. But let's say if I want to do this with the above as well. Yep, you see it's gonna give us this error that it's not able to identify it beyond this line, and you're gonna see it tells us that unterminated string literal, that is it needs some single quote to close this string, right? But we haven't done that. And similarly we can do this with this double quotes as well. If I try to do that, yep, you're gonna see similar error over here, unterminated string literal. So this is the power of using a backtick. But what else does it provide us? So I can write something like this. Let's say this string, I'm gonna just say roadside coder, and what I can do now is I can take this variable and I can write it inside of this backtick. Check it out. If I want to write this variable in place of this, I just can say $sign and open and close curly braces. This is what we call a template literal, and we can write any JavaScript inside of it. So I can write this variable inside of it, and if I try to render this, you're gonna see I'm gonna say console log string 4. I'm gonna say node and name of the file and run this, and you're gonna see subscribe to roadside coder just like we wanted it to be. And now I'm about to show you something that I can guarantee you didn't know up until now. So okay, we have written console log just like this, right? But what if I get rid of these brackets and write backticks in place of this, and let's write something inside of it. Let's say hello. And let's try to run this. What just happened? Did you guys know about this way of writing a console log? We have always seen that we have to wrap it inside of a brace like this, right? But this is the power of backticks. Let's try to write something else instead of this. So I'm gonna do this. In place of this, I'm gonna write hello world, how are you? Now what do you think is gonna happen? Let's first see what we have written over here. We have written hello, and then we've written template literal, and inside of it we've written a string. We could have taken this word and stored it in somewhere else. Let's say const str equals word, just like this, and we could have provided it over here, right? Same thing, and same with this as well, and we've written how are you. Now let's try to see what do we get when we try to run this. Okay, we've got an array with hello and how are and this empty string over here, and then we've gotten this world and you separately. That is both of the strings or both of the variables that were inside of this template string over here were provided to us separately, this world and this u letter. So that is what these backticks do. When you try to call a function by using these backticks, what it does is it takes these strings and converts them into a single array. First this, then this, and then after this, which was an empty string, so that's why it converted into an empty string. And then all of these string or template literals are going to be provided as a separate variables over here. So let me show you this by creating a separate example. So I'm going to create a function over here called test, and this will take a string, a variable called YouTube channel, and a variable called person, right? And what we're simply doing over here is we're just console logging string, YouTube channel, and person. Cool. Let's try to call this function by using template literals. And I'm just gonna provide it simple subscribe to, and I'm gonna take two variables over here, channel and name. So I'm gonna say subscribe to, add template string, channel name, run by, so we're basically written over here subscribe to roadside coder run by Piyush. Let's see what do we get. Okay, so as you can see, as I told you, what it has done over here is it has taken all of these strings, first this, then this, and then after this. It has converted all of these into an array and it has provided it to this string variable over here, and that is why it has printed string just like this as an array. But all of these two template string variables, it has been provided to these two separate variables and they have printed it separately. Now what if there was some, oh, you know what, I'm gonna remove this person from now over here. So you're gonna see this name will not be provided to any variable now because there is no variable here to receive it. So you see, we just get this. Now even though this technique right over here by using backticks to call a function, you might not use it a lot in your day-to-day work, but just in case you might get asked this question in your interview. Now next we're gonna see how we can know the length of a string. So let's say we have a string, I'm just gonna take string right over here, and if I say console log str.length, and now if I try to print this, yep, we get 27, so which is the exact length of this string. Now how can we access a particular character from inside of a string? So what we can simply do is we can, let's say console log, and inside of it I can say str and whatever character that we need to access. So we have this subscribe to roadside coder, right? Let's try to access this s, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3. So 3. Just like an array, we can access the characters inside of a string over here. If I run this, yep, you see we get s over here. We can also use something like str.char at, which means character at. You can see it returns the character at the specified index. So character at, and we're going to provide round braces over here, and I can say 3. So now, yep, you see we get the same output. Now let's see how we can loop throughout this string, how we can access different characters of a string. So we can use the similar technique. We can do something like this. We can, let's say have a for loop. We can start from 1, it's gonna go to str.length, and we can simply inside of this we can say console log str and simply I. So now you're gonna see we get all of these separately. Yep, you see we get all of the characters separately inside of this loop. Cool. So now we know how we can access the characters and how we can loop through it. But you might be thinking, so okay, we can access characters just like this, right? But so does that mean we can change a particular character from a string as well? Let's try to do this. So modifying strings. If I say str of 3, and instead of s I can say b over here, right? Simply. And now let's try to console log str. Let's see what do we get. The string didn't change at all. Why did this happen? It's because string in JavaScript are immutable. You cannot change them just like this, just by doing, you know, targeting it with an array bracket and providing it some character. So we can say str.replace, and you're gonna see replaces text in a string using a regular expression or search string. So I can say replace, and now we're supposed to specify what we are supposed to replace. So let's say instead of subscribe, I'm gonna say just sub. So it's gonna take this whole word and it's gonna replace it with this sub. So now if I say run this, yep, you see it got replaced by sub. If we want to replace one single character, let's say just s with b. So now if I run this, yep, you see it got replaced with a b. And yep, you might have guessed it right. It identifies small s and capital S as a different characters. And I'm gonna get to that in just a moment why it does that. There's another function called replaceAll, which will replace all of the instances of that particular word. So now let's see what word do we get multiple times. Let's replace E. So if I, instead of E, I'm gonna say C. Now if I run this, So you see, so E was over here, it got replaced with C, over here it got replaced with C, over here it got replaced with C, right? So replace just replaces the first instance of that particular character, but replaceAll replaces all of the instance of that particular character. Cool. Now next, there's another function called concat. So what does concat do? So if I say const new string, and we have to join two strings. So one of the string, let's say, is str. We can say str.concat, and so inside of str we have subscribe to roadside coder, and let's say and share this video. Now if I try to console log this new str, if I try to run this, you're gonna see subscribe to roadside coder and share this video. Okay, I need to have a space over here. Yep, you see, this has joined both of these strings and created a new strings out of it inside of this new str. Now similarly, what if we have a string which has some gaps? So if I, let's say, just take this, and right over here we can write a string which has a lot of gaps at the beginning and at the very end, and let's say hello world. Now if we try to console log this, you're gonna see we get the same output with all of these spaces, right? But we don't want that. We want to remove these spaces, so we can say new str.trim, and what trim does is, you can see over here, removes the leading and the trailing white spaces and the line terminators, right? So if I run this now, you're gonna see we have gotten rid of all of these spaces at the beginning and at the very end. One thing to notice, that it cannot remove the spaces in between. So if we have these spaces, it will not remove that space from between, just from the trailing and the, just the trailing spaces basically. Now what if we have a character inside of a string and we want to know which index does that character belong or that word belongs? So we're gonna see how we can do searching inside of a string. I'm gonna say console log, and I'm gonna use my original str string, and I'm gonna say str.indexOf, and inside of over here you can see the substring to search for in a string. If I, let's say R, where is R coming? And if I try to run this, yep, you're gonna see it gives us 13th index. And now if I try to write something like coder, it can also search the words for us as well, that it's in the 21st index. So we can search both character as well as a word as well. Now what if that particular character or the word that we're trying to search appears multiple times in that word? So let's see, in that we have E, right? E appears over here, and over here, but we want to know what's the very last index of this character. So what we can do is, we can say lastIndexOf and write E. And now let me just remove this console logs. If we try to run this, we get 24. We get the very last index. Similarly, we have Boolean functions as well, which are startsWith, endsWith. So if I say startsWith, you can see returns true if the sequence of the elements is same as the corresponding elements of this object. So let's see, if I say startsWith and say S, it's gonna give us true. See, it starts with S, but if I write something else, it's gonna give us false, because obviously this does not starts with S, right? So it starts with S. And similarly, we have another function called endsWith. So our sentence was ending with R. So, no, wait, what was it ending with? Okay, it was ending with this exclamation mark. So now if I run this, yep, you see, we get both of these to be true. So yeah, you see, there are so many powerful functions in JavaScript which allows us to navigate throughout our data structure questions and makes them so much easy to solve. But we're not done yet. I'm going to continue and I'm going to discuss more such functions. But before that, if you're preparing for your front-end interview and you would like me to help you in your front-end interview preparation, just click the link in the description down below and book a one-on-one call with me. We're going to discuss tips, tricks. I'm going to give you a lot of resources. I'm going to design a proper roadmap tailored to your situation, which is going to help you out a lot in your front-end interview preparation. So click the link in the description down below and book a one-on-one call with me. Now, let's say we want to extract something from this string. Right, we want to, let's say we have this string called subscribe to roadside coder, and I want to extract this roadside coder word from this string. So let's see, this comes at okay, so this comes at the 13th position. So what I can do is, to extract this substring from it, I'm gonna say console log, and inside of it I can say str.substring. So what is substring? Substring takes two things. First is a start number, and other is an end number, which can also be undefined in some cases. So let's see, if I just provide the start number, which is 13th in our case, and try to run this, you're gonna see it starts from 13th and goes to the very end of the string and provides us the whole string after 13th index, right? But what if I say from 13 to 25 and run this? But wait, it gave us roadside code, it didn't give us R. So that is what this substring does. The end number is omitted. So if we want R to appear, we have to give index plus 1, that is 26. Now it's gonna give us complete roadside coder. And if we want that exclamation mark as well, we can give 27. But see, this is a little bit tedious for me. Why would I go on and count all of these characters from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? What if there was some feature if I could just say, you know, from 13 to -1? From, if we're counting from end, it should be like 0, -1, -2, something like that, right? If I say -1, it's not gonna give us anything. It's just gonna print this string in reverse. So you see, it gave us string before roadside coder, before R, but we don't want that. So wouldn't it be nice if there was a function that could have done this? Yes, there is a function which is called slice. So it returns a section of a string, just similar to substring, but it is much more powerful. We can say -1 over here, and now you're gonna see. Yep, you see, we get roadside coder from this substring, and we get roadside coder from here, slice. Let's say -13. Let's see what do we get. So it should start with -13 and go to -1. Yeah, it started with -13, which was O. So I guess I should put 14 for R. So yeah, you see, we got the complete word over here. So yep, it depends on your use case and the particular question that you're trying to solve in your DSA interview, what function that you are supposed to choose in that particular moment. So we've seen this string over here, but can you see that this string has some capital letters, some small letters, again capital letters over here. What I want to do is I want to convert this complete string into lowercase letters basically. So let's see how we can convert the case inside of a string. But before doing that, if you're enjoying this tutorial up until this point, open your Instagram app right now and search roadside coder and hit that follow button as hard as you can, because I'm very active on Instagram, and if you have any doubts, any queries, or just a normal message, you can ping me on Instagram for this. So go on, do it. I'm waiting. What? I'm being serious over here. Open your Instagram app right now and follow me there. Oh, you've already done it? Okay, let's move on with this video. I'm gonna show you one thing. Let's say we have a variable over here called to be converted, and this has something, let's say a number 1. And now if I say console log, and if we want this number to be converted into a string, what we can do is, first of all, we're gonna simply print it over here, and I'm gonna show you if I print this, it's gonna be printed like a number. If I wrap this whole thing inside of a string keyword, now if I print this, this is actually a string. Now it's hard to identify it over here. Let me just write it inside of a browser. So I've come to this console inside of our browser. So now if I say a number, I'm gonna say string, and I'm gonna write a number inside of it. You're gonna see we get this number inside of these quotes. Now similarly, if except number, I try to create if I try to write undefined and try to convert this, it's get converted into a string undefined. What if I write null? Same thing. If I write, let's say, true or false, again same thing. So most of these things, if when converted, give us the exact same thing as the output. But this is not the case when it comes to array or an object. So if I, instead of this, I'm gonna write an object over here with name, and yeah, we've already written it inside of the console log to be converted into a string. Now, what do you think will happen over here? And this is actually a very important interview question as well. A lot of interviewers do ask this question. Anyone would say that, okay, this will also get converted into a string, right? No, that is not the case. If I try to run this, it gives us this object. It gives us the type of this particular variable. So this is not the right way to convert an object into a string. To convert an object into a string, what we can do is we can say JSON.parse, not JSON.parse, it should be JSON.stringify. Parse is to convert string back to the object. So if I run this, you're gonna see this got converted into a string now. And if we want to convert it back, so we can just wrap it inside of json.parse, and this string will be converted back to the original object. If you want to know more about objects and how objects work in JavaScript, I've actually created a complete video on objects and discussed a lot of such interview questions in that particular video. Now, coming back to our original question, which I asked, how we can convert this complete string into a string which has all of these characters as lowercase or probably as uppercase, right? So let's see. I'm going to say console.log and say str.toUpperCase, and I'm going to write one more line, toLowerCase. Now let's see. If I try to run this, yep, you see this got converted into capital letters. All of these characters inside of this string got converted into capital, and all of these characters inside of this string got converted into the lowercase letters or the small letters. But there's one confusion still in my head. Why do JavaScript considers the capital S or a small s or capital A or a small a as two different entities? I mean, how does JavaScript decides that capital A is different and small a is different? So if I, let's say, console log and say A, which is a capital A, is equals to a small a, and let's see, it's false. How does JavaScript know that this is a capital letter or a small letter? So JavaScript uses something which is called ASCII characters. Basically, every single character that you see in JavaScript has an ASCII code associated to it. Let me show you. If I try to go to Google and the ASCII codes, and let's go to images, you see, we get this huge table. We have different codes for different characters. So for example, for 65, it's A. For 66, it's B. And so on. Similarly, for smaller characters as well, it starts with 97 and goes all the way to 122. And we can see we have other different types of characters as well with different types of ASCII value. So how can we access a particular ASCII value in a JavaScript? So let's say we have this A over here. We can say A dot, or let's say if we have some string, let's say we can just take our original string, which is this one. Let's know the ASCII value of S. So I'm going to take this str.char code at. So we want to know what is the ASCII code at 0th index. And if I try to run this, we get 83. Let's verify this. So capital S has 83 ASCII value. Now let's say we have been provided a ASCII value, let's say 65, right? We know 65 stands for A. What if we want to convert 65 back to A? So we can say string dot char code from char code, and I can provide it whatever ASCII value. So let's say if I provided 65 over here, you're gonna see this gives us A as an output. Yep, you see we got A as an output. So there is so much to explore in JavaScript, right? We've just been scratching the surface. And a lot of people are afraid of DSA. They think, okay, DSA is pretty hard. But trust me, if you have the good foundation of these basics like these and try to go on to practice on platforms like Leetcode, trust me, no one can stop you from becoming a champion competitive coder. Everything starts from the scratch. Everything starts from the very fundamentals, right? So always try to take one step at a time and work on your basics first, and then try to aim for the stars. Now let's move forward and see if we have two strings with us. str1, which is apple, and we have another string const str2, which is banana. Now we want to know how similar both of these strings are. Let's see how we can go on and compare these strings. I can say str1 dot localeCompare. So determines whether two strings are equivalent in the current locale. So let me just show you first str2. And then try to run this. We get -1, which means these strings are nothing like each other at all. But if I make them apple, like same string, you're gonna see we get 0. That is, both of these strings are equal. Now similarly, if I have a string with me, let's say this string, our original string, and if I try to say, so log, if I want to check if this string has something that I want to search. So if I say str.includes, if I want to see if it includes subscribe or not. Now if I try to run this, yeah, you see we get true over here. That is, it does include this subscribe. But if, let's say, if I write anything like hello and try to do this again, we get false, that it does not include this hello word. And trust me, this includes is which you're gonna use a lot while doing your DSA questions. Now let's switch gears and see how we can split and join strings among each others. So let's take our example of the original string. Let's say we want to break that string whenever a white space comes or a space comes. So I can say console log and I can say str dot split. And I want to split it whenever this space comes. Now if I try to run this, we get this. So you see, it returned us with this array over here with all of these characters broken down into separate words. If I wanted to, let's say, break it from E, I'm going to write E over here. And you see, whenever it encounters E, it broke the string. Now similarly, let's say we have an array with apple, banana. Now I want to join both of these. I can say console log arr dot join, and I want them to be joined with and. So I'm going to say and now you're going to see it joined them, apple and banana. Or we could have used any commas or whatever that we wanted for them to be joined by. So yep, you see how many functions we have inside of our strings to manipulate our strings, to search, to convert the cases, to split, to join, to compare, and much more, right? So we're going to use all of this knowledge that we have gained over here to solve some of the most commonly asked interview questions that are asked in our DSA interviews. So the first question is to truncate the text. Now we're supposed to write a function called truncate that checks the length of a given string, str, and if it surpasses a specified maximum length, that is max length, it replaces the end of the string with ellipsis character. Okay, so we have been given this string over here and will be given a max length character as well. You know, max length equals 9. Right, so if we take this, so what's going to happen is it's going to truncate the string to the 9th index and add these 3 dots, but only if the string surpasses this max length. So let's say if this string was this much only and the max length is more than the length of the string, then obviously we won't truncate the string and we'll just return this much only. So this is an edge case that you need to keep in your mind. We're not supposed to put these 3 dots every single time, even when it is not required. So let's see how we can do that. Let's create a function called truncate. And this will take 2 things, as mentioned, str and max length. Now inside of it, first of all, as we discussed, we're going to check if the length of this string is more than this or not. So str.length is more than max length. If that's the case, only then we'll perform our required steps, else we will just return str. So if it's more than that, so I'm just going to say str.slice, and you might remember I just discussed what slice is. So slice takes 2 things. One is the start number, another is the end number. So we're going to start with 0 and we're going to go all the way to this max length minus 1, because obviously we start from 0, right? And this max length is with respect to when it starts from 1. So I'm just going to say this plus I'm going to add 3 dots in the end. Else, also I should write return. Else we're supposed to return this string over here. And yeah, I think this should be it. Let's try to run this. Truncate, and I'm going to provide this with our string. Let's say this and 9. Let's try to run this. Okay, obviously we didn't do console log. Let's try to run this again, and you can see we get subscript. And you know what, I made a mistake over here. This slice already goes to 1 length less than what is provided over here. So if you're providing 9 over here, so it's gonna go to the 8th index already. So we don't need to just provide -1 over here. And if we just do this again, yep, you see we get this whole word and up until the 9th index. Now the next question is palindrome number, and I'm sure you must have heard about this question from somewhere, because it's a very popular interview question, and I cannot stress on the fact how much this question is asked in our front-end interviews especially. So I've already discussed this question in my top 5 DSA questions video, so I'm gonna play that clip right over here. So what the question says is that we are given an integer which could be like 121, and we're supposed to tell if it's a palindrome number or not. Now what is a palindrome number? So palindrome number is a number which reads exactly the same when you read it forward or backward. So if this is 121, So if you reverse the number 1 to 1, so it's exactly the same as it was forward as well as backwards. But that is not the case with 10. So if you read 10, it's 1 0, but if you read it in reverse manner, it's 0 1. Therefore, in this case, output will be false, but in the first case, output will be true. So let's see how we can do this. So I'm going to create a function over here. Const is palindrome. Function, you can make it a normal function or you can arrow function as well, doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to assign an anonymous function to this. And obviously we're going to take an input which can be x in this. So now what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to check if this number is exactly the same when it's reversed as well, right? So I'm going to say return x should be equal to x. So what we're going to do, we're going to reverse the number, right? So first of all, we have this in this numerical format. So what we want to do is we're going to convert it into a string first, because obviously we have inbuilt functions to reverse the string in JavaScript, right? So I'm going to say dot to string. Now this will convert this 1 to 1, that is, I'm going to comment over here, 1 to 1 to this string 1 to 1, right? So first step is to convert it into a string. Now, since we've converted it to a string, we have access to a lot of inbuilt functions, such as split. Now, what does this split do? Now, when you provide something in between of these braces, so let's say I'm going to keep it empty. So what it's going to do is it's going to find this particular thing in this string. So in 121, this is just nothing, right? This is a normal cursor. So it's going to split the string from over here. Let's say if you were to put 2 over here. So what it will do is it will convert it into an array with 2 things, 1, 1. So it will split the string from this 2. But in our case, we're not going to provide anything. So it's going to just split the string from this cursor. So in our case, it's 1 to 1, an array like this. After we have done this, we have reached till this point. So I'm going to put it right over here. Okay, cool. So we have an array over here. We are supposed to reverse this array, right? So we have an inbuilt function in JavaScript called reverse. Now, as if I go on over here, and so it says reverses the elements in an array in place. What does in place means? In place means it doesn't create another array. It just reverses the existing array of this array. So if we say it, so obviously this looks exactly the same as it looks from forward and backward. So it will look exactly the same even when reversed. So if it was 10, it would have been converted into 0 1 instead of 1 0 by using this reverse function. Now after that, we have reversed it successfully. Now we're gonna join all of this string and convert it into a number. So now I'm gonna say join. Now you're also provide, just like split, you are supposed to provide from where, like what are you going to use to join these? Like if I were to say, I don't know, dot, so it would have been converted to something like this, 1.2.1, a string obviously. So it would have been joined like this, but we're not gonna provide this dot, so it's gonna be joined just like that. And we have a string which is reversed now, but our original x was a number, right? So now we have two options. Either we convert this into a string and then compare it with this, or we can convert this into a number. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna simply put this plus operator over here. What this does is it simply converts this string into a number if it's possible. But let's say if it was an A or B, a string like that, that's not possible to convert it into a number, right? So let's see what happens when we try to do that. I'm just gonna console log this over here after commenting that out. If I, let's say plus, and if we have a string called A, and I'm gonna open my terminal and I'll say node, and the name of the file is 1 palindrome. I'm gonna run this. Oh, obviously we're not calling this function. So let's call this function over here. I'm just gonna randomly provide it something. It doesn't really matter in this case, but it will matter later. So I'm gonna run this, and you're gonna see we get not a number. But if this was, let's say x, sorry, not x, I'm gonna say 10. So if it was 10, then let's see what do we get. I'm gonna run this again. So we get 10 in the numeric format. So that is what this plus helps us to do. So yeah, that's the console log. And let's see, I'm gonna store our result over here. Const result equals is palindrome, and I think we should get either true or false with respect to like whatever we do over here. So I'm gonna log response over here, and I'm providing 1 to 1 right now. I'm gonna run this, and we get true, obviously, because this is a palindrome string. But if I were to provide 10 and then run this again, we're gonna get false. So this is how you identify if a number is palindrome or not, and this is a very ground level problem. Now I'm gonna take this problem and I'm gonna go to Leetcode. Now I'm gonna submit this. It's gonna run all of the test cases, all the different test cases that are available in the platform, and here we go. The solution is accepted, and it says it beats the 54.40% of the solutions. But let's try to improve this solution a little bit. So I'm gonna go back to my VS Code, and I'm just gonna add one condition over here. I'm just gonna say if x is less than 0, then obviously if it's less than 0, then it's not a palindrome, right? Because it will have that minus with it. So if it's minus 10, then obviously it's not going to be a palindrome string. If x is less than 0, I'm going to return simply false, so that it doesn't go to this operation over here and we can save some time for it. And you know what, instead of this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it one-liner. So I'll say return. If x is less than 0, then I'm going to say false, else it's going to do our original operation. Okay, let's copy it up and let's try to run this. And you can see our solution beats 83.93% of the solution. So that's a huge optimization. So as you must have noticed now how important the edge cases are. Even though your code is working absolutely fine, but if you add the edge cases for even the slightest conditions, it can optimize your code a lot sometimes. And also I'm going to provide the link to all of these codes in the description down below, so you can check them out and refer to them. Alright, now the next question is Hamming distance. So the question says that we've been given two strings, x and y, and we're supposed to return the Hamming distance between them. Now, what is a Hamming distance? So, see, we have these two strings over here, right? First of all, we have to ensure that they are of same length. If they are not of the same length, we cannot do Hamming distance. But if they are of the same length, then we have to identify which characters of that particular string are different. For example, in hello, you can see first character is h, fine. Second is different, okay, 1, same, and now last character is different. So two characters of these strings are different, so the output is going to be 2. So let's see how we can do that. Also, there are two variations for this question. I'm going to discuss the first variation now, and then I'm going to discuss the other variation as well. So I'm going to create a function over here called Hamming distance, and it's going to take two things, x, comma, y, two variables. Now first of all, as I mentioned, we have to check if they are of the same length or not. So I'm going to check over here if x dot length is not equal to y dot length. And you must have noticed that I stress on edge cases a lot always, because edge cases are the one that save your questions from the error. These are the unexpected cases that you sometimes forget to handle, and these turn out to be error when you're trying to run your code during the interview. Right, so we're going to check if x dot length is not equal to y dot length, then we're going to say throw new error, or probably you could have displayed some console log, but it's better to throw some error that strings must be same length. Once that handle, I'm going to take a variable called distance and put it to 0 by default. And after that, I'm going to run a for loop. So I'm going to run a for loop throughout this string. Right, so I'm going to start with 0. So I equals 0, let I equals 0. I is gonna go to x dot length and I plus plus. Now inside of it, simply we're gonna check for each and every character. So if x of I is not equal to y of I, then simply distance plus plus. We're gonna increase the value of distance, and I think yeah, that should do it. Let's see. I'm just gonna say return distance. Let's try to run this. I'm going to say console log and Hamming distance. I'm going to first provide hello, and then in the next hello, I'm going to change two characters. And let's see. Yep, you see, we get two difference of 2. So if let's say I don't make it of the same size, yep, we get this error. String must be of same length. But what if I make them absolutely same? Then you're gonna see we get nothing, or probably we could have thrown 0. I think it's returning 0, but it's not showing it in the terminal over here. Yep, that is what was expected from this. But I'm gonna show you one more implementation of this, which is on Leetcode. So on Leetcode, the question says this. So it says that we've been given 2 integers and supposed to return the Hamming distance. Now over here, Hamming distance means the difference between the corresponding bits. Now what are these bits that we are talking about? So bit means these binary conversion of all of these numbers. Now for those of you who don't know, I'm gonna show you binary numbers. You may have heard about this in school or somewhere. So the numbers, that normal numbers that we use are decimal numbers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And all of these numbers have a binary equivalent for those. For 0 it's this, for 1 is this, 2 is this. You don't need to remember all of this. We have a way in JavaScript to convert a number from decimal to binary, and I'm going to show you how we can do that. So if I, let's say, just go to the inspect over here. One function that I didn't discuss with you earlier is toString. So let's say I'm going to take a number called num and I'm going to write it 2, and I'm going to say num dot toString. Now if I run this just like this, you're going to see it gives us string. Yeah, that's fine. But if I say 2 over here, it gives us the binary equivalent of 2. If I provide 9 over here, 9, and then if I try to run this with 2, sorry, yeah, so now when I provided it 9 and I ran num.toString, it gives us 1001, which you may have seen in that table. It was 1001 for 9. So yep, this is how you convert a decimal number to a binary number. Again, you don't need to know much about this conversion. You just need to know that this function is the one that converts it. And in Hamming distance, this is what we need to compare. So over here you can see this is what we're comparing. Only the bits that are different, that is what we're supposed to provide in the output. So let's see how we can do that. Yep, so I've written the second variation for this question. Given 2 integers x and y, return the Hamming distance between their bits. You know what, I'm just gonna take this function over here just like this, and what I'm gonna do, so we're checking this over here, right? So instead of checking this, first of all, we're gonna convert them into their bits, right? So what are we gonna do? First of all, x equals x dot toString, and I'm gonna give this 2. So x got converted, and then y will be converted. But I need to show you one thing. So if I go back to the browser, if I'm converting num.string to with 9, it's fine. It's giving us 4-digit binary number. But if I if I change the value of num to 2, and then I say num.toString, you see it's 10. So it's not giving us the 4-digit binary number. So the first rule of Hamming distance is that the length of both of these should be equal. So what we need to do, if we have 10, we need to add 2 zeros before it to make it equal to the other one, right? So instead of throwing this error over here, if they're not equal in size, also I'll check if x is less than y, then we're gonna modify x. If y is less than x, then we're gonna modify y. So if x dot length is less than y dot length, I'll say while, run a while loop, x dot length. I'm gonna run this loop until x dot length is not equal to y dot length, and I will say x equals 0 plus x. So you see what I'm doing over here? I'm just adding a 0 before it until it gets equal. But if it's not the case, if y is less than x, so else, I'm gonna simply take this and I will replace it with y. Simple. And I think, yeah, that should do it. We just needed to do this thing extra in this, and I think the rest of the logic remains the same. So I'm gonna take this console log, and I'm gonna say 1 over here, same input that was provided on Leetcode, and 4. So it should give us 2. Yep, we're getting 2. If it's 9, then we're getting 3. 3 bits are different. All right, let's take this implementation and I'll try to run this on Leetcode and see if our code satisfies all of the conditions there or not. So let me close this. Let's try to run this. Okay, it's run successfully. Submit. Okay, our code beats 100% of the users with JavaScript. Amazing. Now the next question is valid anagram, and trust me, this is also one of those questions that is asked so much in our DSA interviews, and I've discussed this question as well in that top 5 DSA questions video. So I'm gonna play that clip again. Now what the hell is this anagram? So anagram is a word or phrase formed by rearranging the letter of a different word or a phrase using all the original letter exactly one. So what does that mean? So in the input we have two things. First is this the original word, which is anagram, and then we have this other word called nagaram, right? So we're supposed to tell if this other word is being made by rearranging the letters of this first word. If it is the case, then this is going to be true. Then this is going to be an anagram number. So as you can see over here, we have this rat and then we have this car. So obviously this is not made by rearranging the letters of rat, right? Because it has T and this has extra C. So obviously this is not an anagram word, right? So that is what we're supposed to do in this question. We're supposed to write a logic which takes two things. One is the original word and the other is the original word or a phrase. And we're supposed to tell if it's an anagram number or not. So cool. We're going to create a function over here. Const is anagram. And I'm going to take two things, S, comma, T. Now we're going to first learn the very, very simple, very ground level simple approach. So what my plan over here is, I'm just going to take the first number, anagram, and I'm going to take the other number, nagaram. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to sort these numbers. If these numbers are made exactly by using the same letters, then these are going to be sorted in the exact same fashion. So it's going to give us something which is exactly the same as the other one. Then we can compare both of these, and if they are same, then obviously this is an anagram, right? So I'm just gonna say S equals S dot split. So do you remember I just talked about this split function in our first question? So in the palindrome question, so we're supposed to split this to make this an array. So if we're gonna split this, this is going to become a in the string format, you just assume that these are string, right? I'm not going to provide the braces to each and every one of them. So this is going to convert it into an array, right? So that's why we're using the split. And now when this is converted into an array, we have a function called sort in our array, which sorts them in the ascending order. So if I say sort, this just simply be sorted in an ascending order. So I'm assuming this will be like A, comma A, comma A. So this is what it should look like when sorted. And now what we're going to simply do, we're going to join it. So that also we're going to join it by the empty string. So it's going to be converted into A, M, N, R. And that is exactly what will happen over here as well. But in this case, obviously it's going to be just like that. So it's going to be an array like this, and then it's going to be sorted, and then it's going to be joined. So these two are exactly the same. So now we can compare these. So what I'm going to duplicate it. Instead of S, I will just say T. Now it is reversed again, and now I'm going to return if S equals to T. And I think that should be good enough. Let's take this and throw it into the Leetcode and check it out. So I'm just going to replace it over here and submit this. All right, this is amazing. So this has ran successfully. As you can see, but this is a pretty slow solution. It beats only 36% of the other solution. So we're gonna just try to go ahead and optimize this problem so that we can make this code a little bit fast. So I'm just gonna comment it out. Comment say first approach. Now I'll take the exact same function and try to create another approach. I'm gonna keep this example up here so that you can refer to this. Also, I'd like to mention that instead of doing this separately, taking this in a separate line, you can just do this triple equals to this. So it's gonna become basically one liner, right? So that is if you want to write it in a clean way. Now for our second solution. Now, for those of you, if you are new to JS, first of all, I hope you're not new to JS. But if you are, then I'm gonna do this second solution by using something called objects in JavaScript. If you don't know what object is, you can watch this video that I've created on objects. Link will be in the description down below. But even if you don't have any knowledge about objects, don't worry, I'm gonna explain it briefly in this video as well. So first of all, since we are supposed to make this a fast solution, an optimized solution, so we're gonna check the edge cases first. As you may remember, I mentioned edge cases are very important. So I'm gonna check. So let's throw the obvious out of the window. So if these two strings doesn't have the same amount of length, same length, then obviously this is not an anagram, right? Because how will it be anagram if it's not using all of the letters or the alphabets of the original string? So I'm just gonna say if s.length, if it's not equal to t.length, then obviously we're gonna return false. It's not an anagram. That's pretty ground level logic. Now I'm gonna define two objects over here. Object 1. So object is like if you're coming from some other programming language, objects are basically like map. I mean, we have map in JavaScript as well, but let's talk about that sometime else. But these are exactly like map. We can map key value pairs in these objects, and I'm going to show you how. So I'm going to define two objects over here, and below that I'm going to run a for loop, and I'm just going to explain you what my strategy is going to be in just a second. So this for loop will start from 0 and go to s.length. It can be t.length or s.length, doesn't really matter because they both are same length, right? So what I'm going to do over here, I'm going to take these objects. So I'm going to take the first object, and I will say I'll take these letters one by one. So I will take a first, so it's going to be key, and I'm going to say it appears one time in this string. Let's take a small example. Now let's say I'll take rat and tar example. I think these both are valid words. So I'll just say R appears one time in this, and A appears one time in this, and T appears one time in this. And similarly, I'm just gonna map it for the other object as well, right? So it will also give us the same thing. And obviously objects doesn't have any sequence to be defined. So we can access objects from any single sequence. I'm just going to discuss that in just a minute. Let me just write this out first. So T, A, and R. So we have both of these objects made over here. Now we can iterate through one of these objects and pick, let's say R. We're going to take this R. We're going to check, okay, R appears one time in this object, and we're going to access R. Okay, R appear one time in this object as well. Then cool, that works. We're going to move forward. We're going to check for A. Let's say if A were to appear 2 times and over here as well 2 times. So we're going to check, okay, these both are also same. And then we're going to check for T. Okay, that is also same. Then obviously this is an anagram word or anagram string. So this is what our strategy is going to be. So I'm going to go inside of this for loop now. I'm just going to say obj1. So first of all, we are supposed to create these objects, right? We don't have these objects defined just yet. So I'm just going to create this also for obj1. I'm going to take the first string, obviously the S. I'll take the first character of this string, or ith character of this string, that is in this case will be, let's say if you're taking anagram, so this is going to be A, right? So obj of A, this is going to be the key, and we're going to provide it now the value. So the value of A will be 1. So this appears one time in this string. And similarly is what we're going to do for T as well. So for the first character, that is N, it's going to take N and it's going to say 1. But what if we encounter N again in this? So as you can see, is in this case we have A, and A. So if this for loop goes forward in this string and it encounters another A, then it's going to overlap this 1, right? Because that is how object works. If it's if it's 1, then it's going to again access eighth key. What is eighth key? So it's going to access the A key, and it's gonna provide it the 1 again. But that is not what we want, right? We want to access this key and we're gonna add it. If it appears again, we're gonna make it 2 over here, right? So that is what we're going to do. So over here, I'm gonna say this, whatever the value of this is, just add 1 to it. But in the first case, there's going to be no value, right? So I'm just gonna say, if there's value, just provide it this, or just provide it 0. So that is what we're gonna do for here as well. T of I. So after this, we're gonna have both of these objects made. Now, after that, we're gonna loop through this, complete both of these objects, and we're going to refer if it's an anagram or not. I'm gonna use a for loop, actually for in loop. So for in loop looks something like this. Get rid of that. So if we're supposed to loop through an object, we're gonna take each and every key of that object. So in this case, the object is obj1. Oh, I should have written obj2 over here. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to take obj1. Now I'm going to say if, so this will basically loop through all of the keys of the object. So I'm going to say if obj1 key. So this is how we can access it. So it's going to take r first. So if we say obj1 of r, it's going to give us 1 in this case. So if obj1 key is not equal to the same key, we're going to provide it to obj2. So obj2 key. So if it's not equal to that, then instantly we're going to terminate the loop, because obviously if this r doesn't exist in this other object or has a different value, then why would we move forward and compare the other ones, right? So I'm just going to simply terminate it. So return false. I think that is what we need to do. If this runs successfully, if this moves forward after this, then obviously this is an anagram, right? If it didn't fail, then we're gonna say return true. And I think that should be good enough. Let's open our terminal and try to run this. Also, I'm supposed to call this. So is anagram. I'm gonna provide both of these. Anagram and the other one just like that. Yeah, okay, let's try to run this. The third one, okay, I haven't console logged, so log here. Let's try to run this now. It's true. If I remove 1a from this, this is going to be false. Awesome. So this is how you can do. Okay, we haven't taken validation from Leetcode yet. So let's go to the Leetcode and let's take the validation for our code. And there you go. This beats 91.3% of the other solutions. So that is an amazing solution that we have just written over here. So yep, that is it for this video. If you haven't yet accessed our complete DSA with JavaScript series, click this card on right to access the complete playlist. And if you like this video, give this video a huge fat thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more such awesome interview videos.